advisor, entrepreneur, climate advocate, and a communication expert. He's the founder and chief executive officer of OrderPaper Nigeria. And today we'll be talking about setting the agenda for Nigeria's legislative arm of government. And I would leave the floor for Mr. Oke Epia. And I believe that when you have questions, you can put in the comment box, and then you can also ask with whatever flow Mr. Oke wants to do with us today. Good evening, Mr. Oke.
Good evening, my dear brother, and good evening to distinguished fellow Nigerians. Do you hear me? Confirm that you can hear me, please.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you very much for that lavish introduction. I would like to appeal to us to put all of that aside, and just regard me as one of you, in these sessions of learning. Because what we want to do here essentially is to learn together. I bring my perspectives, you bring your perspectives. The policy environment is actually iterative. So, I mean, there is no one size fits all. There is no silver bullet, so all that introduction would suppose perhaps, to some of us that, I come with many answers, if not all the answers. So yeah, let's put that aside and get to talk to one another and learn with us. So I said, good evening, distinguished Nigerians, because we are actually deserving of that appellation. That appellation is reserved, if I could say, or is specific, to the National Assembly, to the senators, specifically. They like to regard themselves and, as a distinguished senator, Lagbaja, ABC, but you and I know that is not always the case. They are not always distinguished. For us, the really distinguished persons should be us, because we are the bosses, because we are citizens, because we are actually the employers of those guys in the red chamber and in the green chamber in Abuja. So I use that word advisedly. Good evening, distinguished Nigerians. Yeah, so I will try to make the best of my time. I think I've been told I have an hour to share with you. What I've tried to do is to put my thoughts together in these slides. Again, is just to organize my flow. I will try my best to abide, by the sequence, but I'm just going to be talking through. And one thing I also like to do is to make my conversations kind of interactive. I don't know how you'd like to operate. I know that for me, it's important to get responses sometimes when I'm speaking to my audience. So I don't know if the practice is for you to unmute and speak, or I don't know how you moderate that. But I think that the chat box would be a great tool to use. Please do provide some guidance if I'm not getting it right, sir. I'll be happy to be properly guided. Right? Is that okay?
So yes, you can. We'll use the chat box, and so that there will be no distractions. So maybe the early part of your class, we use the chat box, and so when you are taking questions, you can then maybe make it more interactive that way. But that's fine. I mean, that's really up to you also.
Right. Thank you very much. So this is what I would do. Let me begin by trying to gauge our understanding of the policy ecosystem specific to representatives in parliament. I like to do these exercises sometimes because it gives me a sense of the level of awareness of the not just the policy space, but key actors in the space that the room has. So I have dropped something on the chat box. I would like for you to, if you do not mind, we have 37 persons on this call. If it not be too much to ask, do me the favor. I would like to see you drop the name of your representative at the State House of Assembly, the state where you're from or the state where you reside, whichever one you choose to. The representative in the National Assembly, and you know there are two chambers, so the House of Representatives and the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If you can do that quickly, drop it on the chat box while we are talking. We would, as we speak, understand why I'm trying to do this little exercise. So please do bear with me. Just drop it on the chat box, your name, the name of the individual representing you in the State House of Assembly, and the name of the individual representing you in the House of Representatives. And lastly, the name of the individual representing you in the Senate. Their names and the names of the constituencies or senatorial districts, as the case may be. Thank you for your cooperation as you do that. You can just follow my leads. I have put an example on the chat if you can. I would come back to the chat box in the next 5 minutes or so to see how many responses that we have had. Yeah, so you are looking at the slides. I'm trying to, now I imagine that this series of engagements, it's been all week long, a couple of days already, at least all day today, has given lots of insights, immersion into, policy discussions. I see that there are 4, right, policy tracks that this entire engagement is supposed to focus on, or distill at the end of the day, so whatever I'm trying to say may not be new to you. I already said that these slides are just to provide some guidance to order my thoughts. What I'm trying to do with the slide that you are looking at is to call your attention to what I call the essential 10 Ps of the policy ecosystem. You guys are a great organization, policy shapers. I look at the work that you do sometimes and I marvel that, this is like David and Goliath scenario kind of work that you do. I mean, the one on the eyes. So it's really a thing to say, to give you the credit that you have been quite impactful in this space, However, let's call attention to how our understanding of the policy ecosystem. So for me, the policy ecosystem has this matrix that has what I have selected as the 10 Ps, the 10 essential Ps, people, and within the context of my own presentation, the legislature, I have tried to narrow down, my thoughts in that regard. So it will be reflective, as you will see in the conversation. So you have people, which is the nucleus of the environment. People, citizens, you and I, as individuals, I mean, we are actually the ultimate beneficiary and the ultimate, dictator, if I may use that word, of the policy space and the policy environment. So for me, people, citizens, you and I are at the heart of the policy ecosystem. Some say we don't like politicians. Politics is a dirty game. Politicians are all evil. They are not all. Yeah, you can't avoid it. So politicians make up that mix, and specifically members of parliament, your legislator, whom I'm asking you to see if you know them by name, the constituencies they represent in that exercise I started with. They are very key actors in the policy ecosystem. And then these politicians, members of parliament, congregate or aggregate and express themselves in the parliament, the floor of the parliament where a lot of things happen, the engine room of the policy, policy products that we have in every sphere of human endeavor as far as the country is concerned. I have also tried to look at policy from the perspective of the National Assembly, of the legislature. So the 3 Ps following parliament, are within the context. Indeed, the 4 Ps following parliament are within the context of, the legislature. And before I try to drill on those, let's look at the last 2, but one, policy pane. The last 3, so Ps number 7 page number 8 and 9, policy pains and policy gain. What is the objective of any policy, of every policy for that matter, by governments, by members of parliament, by the parliament? What is it that they want to do? What is the objective? What is the end game? It's usually two things. There's usually a cause to address a pain. There is a law, there's an existing legislation, but there are defects. The legislation is defective, so there is an amendment that is required to be made to correct that defect. That is why you have amendment acts, finance amendment acts, electoral acts amendments, enactments. So that is a policy pain issue. The policy gain for me is an entirely new, attempt to address an issue that has not been addressed before. So what is the gain that a proposed legislation promises? What does it want to achieve? What does it want to address? The student loan, when it was a bill, what was the objective? We have never had it before. So it's a new legislation. So the gain that it promises, amounts to what I have defined here as the gain, the policy gain. So between the policy pain and the policy gain, you have an amendment and new laws. And all of these are within the ecosystem of the legislature. So it takes us back to the earlier piece after parliaments. So for a law to happen, you need to have a proposal, you need to have draft bills. And so we call them bills, right? And then you have two sets of bills or two kinds of bills, essentially. You have a new bill, and then you have an amendment proposition. So a new bill, when it is passed, it becomes an enactment. It is passed into law, So after a bill is passed into law, what happens? It has to be implemented, right? So that implementation needs to be, it needs to be supervised. That implementation needs to be monitored. That implementation needs to be evaluated so that we could see where there are issues to be addressed. So what Parliament also does, which is a key function of Parliament, is to oversight the implementation of policies. And that is why one of the key of the three core functions of the legislature is the performance of oversight duties. So policy oversight is it. The legislature also does policy advocacy, when they move motions and, adopt certain resolutions on the floor of parliament. Those are, like we know, motions arising out of plenary do not carry a force of law as we currently have them. So they are just advocacy. And that is why you see the language, you hear the language often the cases, the Senate urges the National Emergency Management Agency to provide relief materials to the people of Ogodo, Biri, or Loibre, over the flood issue, So it's usually an urging, so that is an advocacy. Parliament does that a lot, lots of motions. Another very key advocacy, which is very important to us as citizens, as active citizens, is the petitions. Unfortunately, this is one instrument of Parliament that is not receiving the desired attention that it should get. When you and I as citizens receive certain treatments from public and private entities, mostly public entities, we have a need to want to ventilate, to express our grievance. You may not always go to court. The Parliament also provides a window for you to have those grievances addressed. So there is the instrumentality of public petitions, and the National Assembly, both houses. Indeed, it is standard parliamentary practice to have standing committees on petitions, receive public petitions from citizens who are having to deal with one grievances or the other. They are addressed to the best of the ability of Parliament. If they are not able to be addressed, then of course, adjudication can happen in the courts. So that is the policy advocacy duty of the legislature. You and I as citizens, we can constitute ourselves into pressure groups, and we do that all the time. We are fantastic in doing that, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Pressure groups, this could be in the form of community-based organizations, civil society organizations, think tanks, what have you. I mean, we are good at organizing, so But this organizing should be built on informed and well-directed knowledge. So that is why I'm happy that we're able to have this kind of conversation this evening. Let me go to the chat box, like I had said, to see what we have there. I see that we have 40 persons on this call. I see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we have less than 10 responses. Is this because this question came suddenly and so we didn't contemplate it? We are not able to quickly get the data, from the search engine immediately. I tell you why this is important. Key number 2, the politicians, the members of parliament, often the case, are the most castigated public actors. Senators are thieves. They are idiots. They are morons. They don't know what they are doing. All they care about is their pocket. We tend to dismiss them. We tend to be very, very cynical of them. And it's not our fault, to be honest with you. I say to them, whenever I have the opportunity to say to them that, look, all of these things that, citizens describe you as, you brought it upon yourselves. Because you keep doing the wrong thing, you keep, reinforcing those perceptions and narratives by the things that you do. So when you say you are giving tokens for recess, for instance, how would citizens not see you, as being completely insensitive or completely detached from the realities that the very harsh realities citizens currently face? So these are the things. However, why this may be true, why this may be necessary to say, it is not a reason to dismiss members of parliament and to not want to have anything to do with them. And if you ask me, really, that's one of the biggest mistakes we make. Not having anything to do with them, as far as to not trying to know who they are. You should know who represents you in parliament, because that is the individual whom you have given a mandate to promote and project and protect your interests, the interest that is dear to you. The petition that you should submit to parliament is usually routed to your member of parliament. So if you don't know him or you don't care to know him, how do you submit that petition? How do you exploit the opportunity of having your grievance addressed? How do you push for, the bills, the objectives in the bill that you want to see legislated on if you don't know them? So, distinguished members of this, community, it is very important. It is super important that we pay attention. In the minimum, have a sense of who they are, know their names, know the name of your constituency at the state level, know the name of your constituency at the House of Representatives in Abuja, know the name of your senatorial district, and get to know the names of these individuals. Proceed a step further, know who they are, find out what their antecedents. We did some work before the elections. We focused a great deal extensively on coverage of the legislative elections that just had February, March. And what we have found that the key, if you have been following some of our work, is that people vote members of parliament because out of, just without, let me say, out of lots of ignorance, so there is this bandwagon effect on the parliamentary elections. Okay, I'm just going to vote. I just want to go vote for the governor, vote for the president, and that's fine. Also, who are you voting for the Senate? I don't care. I just vote PDP all the same, all the way. I just vote APC all the way. I just vote Labour Party all the way. That's the greatest mistake that we make. Because the executive that you are voting for would not be able to function. Indeed, could be imperiled in the discharge of their function if you have morons, and I use the word now in literal terms, in parliament. If you have those who are not well versed, you have the wrong people in the right place. So it will impede governance. It will impede all of the advocacy work that we seek to do, all the reform that we want to see happen in our country, in our different sectors and spaces. They will not happen because we have the wrong sets of guys in parliament. So that was one work that we did. I'll come back to that in some detail later. But the point I'm trying to emphasize here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, is that we cannot afford not to care about the folks who represent us in the national and state assemblies, because that is the crux. We may not like them. We don't need to like them, but we should know them and proceed to engage them in different ways. And that is what we have done in the last, close to 10 years that OrderPaper has been, operating. We try to engage and, stimulate engagements between citizens, and parliaments, and try to bridge that gap, awful amount of work, but we continue to do it. It could be daunting, but we continue to do it. So yes, I needed to emphasize that point, because members of parliament and the parliament itself, they are very key actors in the policy, ecosystem. And so we cannot ignore them by any means. Please, next slide. Now, what you're looking at, is important for you to be able to understand these basics. Because I just said to you, you have to start with a policy proposal, which is a bill, before it becomes an enactment, which is a law. But you will often hear people say that we do not know how they even passed that law. They just sat down in their offices and just passed the law. That is not the case. That is not the case. Parliamentary practice, indeed, as established by the law and statutes, there are stages that must be consummated, that must be followed for a bill to become law, and that's what you're looking at on the screen. It's very important that we, like I said, not only know those who represent us, but engage them, and engage them in an informed manner. And so if you take a look at this slide, knowing what it is and the steps for a bill to become law, it will help you know at what point to engage your lawmaker, whom you would have already taken the pain, the extra effort to know who he is. Because lawmakers individually make up committees, right? Committees are the organic, functions of the parliament. They are the nodes where parliamentary products are processed, right? In terms of bills, petitions, motions, members of parliament make up committees. So you know the members, you know the committees, then you must know the processes for a bill to become law. I just wanted to focus on the bill making process. And so it usually would begin, with the gazetting of the bill. It will begin with the bill being read at first reading. And that simply means that it's just a mention, the long title of the bill. They will just read it, the clerk of the assembly, either in the Senate or in the House of Representatives, reads the long title, and then nothing is done again about that bill until the next legislative day, or until whenever it is slated for legislative attention. And then it is brought forward for, a debate, a lead debate by the sponsor or sponsors of the bill. And then there is a very, very robust, should be robust debate on the principles, the objectives of the bill, whether it is an amendment bill seeking to cure defects in an existing law, or it is an entirely new legislative proposition. The sponsor has a duty to convince his colleagues in parliament that this bill is worth our time, and so let's proceed with this bill. If the bill is adopted at second reading, it is moved to committees, where the committee now has to perform public hearing. And this is very important, distinguished members of this community. Public hearing is that avenue where you and I, whether or not we have been following the progression of the bill until now, because they have a duty to announce the public hearing. They have a duty. We also have a duty to find out about this public hearing. I'll talk to us about that. Maybe if we have some Q&As, some of these issues I'll explain them further. So the public hearings provide us that opportunity as citizens to go and express our opinions, our thoughts about the bills. We don't like this bill, or we don't like this clause in this bill. Can you take out this bill? And, to be honest with us, I think that there have been great results. We have seen how the social media bill, so-called, did not progress, after that public hearing that had, in it's 2021 or so, that was the end of that bill, because it was only one stakeholder, and that was the Nigerian army, that expressed support for that bill. So yeah, citizens, to be honest, have been engaging, but we need to do more engagement. There are hundreds, tens and hundreds of these that are processed in parliaments, in the National Assembly, in the Senate, in the House of Representatives that we should pay attention to. And if you follow other people closely, that would be a great way to attempt to want to follow up on this process. So when a bill goes through public hearing, the committee that is seized with responsibility has to report back to plenary and say, yes, we have gone through this bill, we have dissected this bill, we have received public inputs on this bill, and so this is our report. We think this bill should proceed. And so plenary again, that is every member of parliament now decides to accept this bill. Okay, we think it should proceed, and then it goes for third reading. It is passed at one chamber. We have a bicameral legislature, and then proceeds to the next chamber where there must be a concurrence from either the Senate or House of Representatives for it to become passed by the National Assembly as a body. When it is passed, of course, it has to go to the president, who must assent to it, append his signature to the bill, then it becomes law. This process is very important and is very key to all of the work that we do. If we don't pay attention to this process, I'm not saying master it, pay attention to it and try to engage this process, we'll continue to have, issues with our advocacy, and results that we seek, we may not get them when we need them. Next, please. This slide is just to show to us, the work that we do in other people. Annually, we do what we call an appraiser of the National Assembly. And we have focused on that in the last 4 years. In the last assembly, 9th assembly specifically, every one of those 4 years, we had an assessment of every member of the National Assembly. In the Senate, 109 of them; in the House of Representatives, 360 of them. Respect to the scorecard of their bills performance, what number of bills they sponsored, the value of those bills, the impact of those bills, all of that. What we also did is to make a disaggregation of the bills in the National Assembly respect to the governance sectors. So if the slide you're looking at, it gives you an idea of, the attention, the way the National Assembly, the 9th National Assembly expended, its energy and resources in what sector of governance, and we did that because we wanted to, match, the agenda of the government as it then was, which was anchored on the 3-point agenda of security, economy, and anti-corruption. So if we have one government, that's the executive and legislature, there should be synergy. So how did the legislature, play along? How did they enable the executive, the presidency, to achieve its 3-point agenda? That's the point we just wanted to make with this data set. Again, if you don't follow the process, all of this may not make meaning to you. So it has to, with the beginning, like I said, know who these individuals are, know the processes, and then follow through on how you can make your inputs and, and engage the process going all through the line. Next slide, please. Let me go back to see if there are more comments. Okay, I think there's just one more comment. I must say thank you to every one of you who have made comments, who have dropped the requested information. For those of us who haven't, this is, for me, let me call it a clarion call. If there's anything that you want to take away from my interaction with you this evening, it's this. Do not look away. Do not care less about those who represent you in parliament. They may be non-entities in your opinion, but they make the laws. They determine one way or the other, they determine our future collectively, at least in the 4 years that they occupy the office. So it doesn't quite make a lot of, it doesn't make a lot of help to us if we ignore them or if we care less about them. So thank you to everyone who has, made that input on the chat box. If you follow through the process, you are better informed to be able to assess their performance, and be able to say to them when you have the opportunity, and the opportunities actually do arise, everywhere there are different means and ways, to engage with our legislators. So we could talk about that, But if you have not been following and you don't know them, you will also perhaps not be interested in the assessments, right? And so that is why for us, we take the extra pain, like I mentioned earlier, to do an annual appraisal of every member of the National Assembly. So the slide you're looking at is what we did for the 9th National Assembly. I think that this was the 3rd year appraisal. This particular slide is for Anambra State. The three senators who represented Anambra State. Incidentally, of these three, only one of them is back in parliament. This is an expression of legislative accountability, which is a core of the work that we do at OrderPaper. I'll tell you some more about this briefly. When we started to put out these data sets, we received some pushback from within the National Assembly, from within supporters of politicians, from among supporters of politicians, from some constituencies. There are certain things we're not able to tell, our publics, because it's a mandate that we choose upon ourselves. What I'm saying that this is not, a very decent, very attractive piece of work to do, but we do it. So we are actually able to put out the information. So if we put out the information as citizens, as active citizens, we need to be able to engage with this information and say, hey, look, Honorable Lagbaja, you have been in National Assembly for 3 years, and we see that you have only sponsored 3 bills, and we see that your colleague in Egbeda constituency has got 13 bills. What's the issue? Of these 3 bills that you sponsored, how did you come about these bills? Did you discuss with us? Did we ask you to present these bills on our behalf? What is the intention of these bills? If we begin to ask questions of our legislators, they will know that we are tracking them. They will know that they owe us a responsibility to make sure that they represent us because we give them the mandate. We have received reports of how this work that we did impacted on the electoral fortunes of some members of the National Assembly. We have received information, reports that some members who did very poorly on account of this accountability tracking that we did were impacted and they couldn't come back to the National Assembly. Because we have this community of citizens across the country, which I may also talk about, in the course of this discussion, where, we enable them with all this information. It's an open community. Everyone is invited to join. Enable them with all of this information and data to enable them, to demand, to track the performance of their legislators and demand accountability. And so in this particular constituency, the individual didn't come back. He was, he lost the re-election. So these things are important because if members of parliament that we first of all have to take the pains to know and then know how they are delivering on the mandates that we are giving to them and then be able to score their performances and use that score, to determine their electoral political fate in future, it will enable us to begin to get the right set of people in the right places. It may not be today, tomorrow. It may not be instant, but, over time and gradually. And this will help all of the policy advocacy that we all do. The reform that we all seek will be enhanced if we have all of these processes taken, and, follow through one way or the other. So that's the importance of this slide. Next one, please. It's the same thing. So this is the one for the House of Representatives. This is the one we did for, I just wanted to show you this. So move on quickly, please. We're inviting you. The 10th National Assembly has already started. They are barely, June, July, they're barely 2 months in office before they have gone on break. What we have also started to do at OrderPaper is to begin to, early in the day, tease out and provide for you clear information, concise information about what they promised, as much as we could get, what they promised to do in Parliament, provide that, and then put it together in this frame that you are looking at. So we call it, the STAR service, stewardship tracking for accountable representation. We want you as citizens to be able to take a look at these individuals. So what we have done is to create specialized portals, sub-portals for them on our website for each one member of the National Assembly. That work is ongoing. We continue to forage for information. It will amaze you how many of them have credible information in the public spaces. Very poor, almost, absent, non-existent digital footprints. It's a struggle, but we must do it. We will not be daunted. We will not stop. So this is a service that we invite you to engage with as far as members of the 10th National Assembly is concerned. We will begin to do some more publicity around this, but I said to mention this to this meeting, in this meeting, so that we can see how we can also begin to engage with the 10th National Assembly that is just barely started. Yeah, so the next slide is, I mentioned the community that we maintain at OrderPaper, a community of active citizens. We call them active citizens engaging the legislature. It's a program that we have. We congregate, we recruit and, maintain active citizens in different constituencies, nooks and crannies across the country. We provide them resources as much as we can. Some of these data sets, information we provide to them, expand their knowledge and understanding of Parliament so that they're better able to engage with their members of Parliament and the legislature generally. So we call it legacy. And we have this creed, we used to philosophical creeds to hold ourselves together to bonds, as a community, which is like, oh, I am a citizen, I hold the highest office of the land, and the next one is also part of the creed. Can you move on to the next one, please? Yeah, you're a citizen and you have one of your fundamental rights and duties is to vote. So as a citizen, you are a voter. And of course, I believe in the sanctity of the ballot. And the next one says, I am a legacy. So I'm an active citizen engaged in the legislature. I have the power to hold legislators to account. If we engage with all of the information and data that we have and put out, it's a lot of power. I've just explained to you, how the work that we did enabled or disallowed some members of Parliament from returning, at the last elections. Some of the work that we did around constituency project tracking in 2017, 2018, yeah, I recall very clearly that a representative in Abuja also lost his re-election because of the issues arising that arose from our tracking of that service of his constituency projects, which was quite a scandal, So these are the things that we want us as active citizens, while we are seeking to intervene in the policy space. We must intervene based on, like I said, from well-informed perspectives, from, non-biased, perspectives. So it enables us to be able to impact on the space, So that is that community that we have. We call it the legacy community across the country. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to be sure that I am, getting your interests. I have been able to sustain your interests. I would just say, let me step back for a while. Like I said, I like this to be interactive and open up the floor, revert back to the moderator to see if we can get some questions or comments, and I can address them. Thank you.
Yeah, I can see. Thank you so much, Mr. Oke Epia. That was really, really great. I definitely, can see so many members here becoming legacies and ensuring that they're able to hold their representatives accountable. I can see two hands, Olaide's hand and Evan's hand. So Olaide, do you want to go first?
Okay. Good evening. Am I audible?
Good evening. Yes, we can hear you. Go on.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Epia, for the insight, and well done. I follow your work, and I'm a member of your community. Yeah, I just want to ask that how do you manage multilingual in a nation of popularity like ours, in deepening conversation and making citizens to take action in holding their parliamentarian responsible? Thank you.
Right, Mr. You want me to take that first, or want more questions and then I can take them all?
No, you can take this one first.
All right, thank you. You know, we are a pretty small organization. We don't have the desired support that will enable us to overcome the constraints that we usually face. And one of the constraints is what you have mentioned, the ability or, you know, the opportunities to be able to express our work and the things that we do beyond just the lingua franca of this country. We are aware that many people would have been able or would have been incentivized to engage with the policy process, their policy actors, the lawmaking institutions and lawmakers, if they some of these things are communicated down to their level. You know, we have taken note of that, and it's something that we're open to support, partnership, collaborations for. You know, and we hope that at some point in time, some of these things will trickle down to help us overcome all of these constraints. We are all in this together. At OrderPaper, belief is that if you and I work together, we go farther than if we work alone. You know, so we would continue to do what we can, open up our hands to receive whatever support, partnership, and collaboration that is available. Which is why I did not I did not have any hesitation in joining this meeting and adding my own little value to the great work that the Policy Shapers community is doing. Thank you for that point.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, sorry, I have a second question.
Okay,
I
sure.
can let's speak to my observation is this. Let me just say on average, in the last 2-3 years, I observed that politicians now they are a bit strategic in placing their member at a key position. And of course, I understand engaging citizens in any advocacy. But you just discover that resistance because they are political alliance. And once they are working with government of the day, they don't want you to like, because most of the time, government want to do project, especially construction. Like I'm joining the call from Ilori. It's unfortunate that our governor could not, how will I put the word now? You could not just then say, come and rejoice with me in the last 5 years to open up any project. But if you talk, people say leave him or he's done and what have you. But the question here is that if you tend to do a kind of advocacy, for instance, in Ilorin South local government, this is how we should engage with our member of the house and what have you. People will tell you, just resume or leave him alone and all that. But where I'm a bit disturbed is that most of the gatekeeper, the community leader, they have political affiliation. And as it were, if you want to do any program, they will be a bit telling you that so they have a kind of a say, and that is a bit a challenge.
It's not a challenge that is not surmountable. Many actors, including those that would otherwise assume should be projecting a local community interests, you know, like you said, are not aligned with politicians, you know, with legislators and political appointees, you know, to further, repress the interests of the people that they are supposed to promote, you know. But then, do we throw our arms up in there and in resignation? We can't do that. We won't do that, you know. If they will not let us engage, you know, physically and directly, we can engage online. This engagement is, for instance, it's an example of what we're trying to build our individual capacities to be able to engage. You know, we can engage your legislator online. You can engage the governor online. You know, different organizations are doing some, you know, very fine pieces of work in being able to call, you know, to help citizens hold public officials to account. You know, budget is doing great work, you know, in project tracking space, you know, in the legislature. Other people is already providing that niche, you know, breaking down the technicalities, you know, in that sector, you know. So we can take the engagements online if it's impossible to hold it physically. I mean, there could be difficulties and challenges, they would always be there. You are an activist in the community, you could become, oh, okay, it is not a case of me against them, and then that could be something that could, tamper your activism, or make you want to look back and say, hey, is this really worth it? And these are realities that we face, But then, the first things first, let us know those we're engaging. Let us know the processes to engage, and let us be strategic in our engagements. Else has happened. Because everybody agreed to see it happen, collectively, but it happened. It started online and it happened. So there are different ways and means to engage. We just need to, first of all, become aware, deliberate, and strategic in the engagements. The realities that you have raised, they would always be there. In fact, they could get further entrenched. But again, one of the great pieces of work that this policy shapers community does is to keep engagements going, and like I said earlier on, you guys are making marvelous impacts. So my brother, let's not be discouraged. We keep going, we keep going. Like they say, we move.
Indeed, we move. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, so we have one more question. Evan, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, sir. Thanks for letting me have the floor. I want to say I commend you really for the work you are doing, because this is one thing I love to do also. So it will interest you. And although our approaches might be different, but then I know what the pain points, the industry, so that kind of thing. What's my question? My question is this. As for people doing what you do, as a person doing what you do, having this agency or organization, somehow you could be a perceived threat to the political class. Have you received any threats whatsoever? And how have you managed them? That is one question. The other is that how do you identify, in the larger world? For example, we often call the media houses the fourth real estate, and somehow we have journalism kind of being attached, or like an attaché to them. So to say, do you see yourself or as someone doing this type of work as part of the fourth real estate, or you think we have, or rather, I'm already joining myself to you, or rather you see yourself doing something unique, and what do you think best identifies what you do? Is it civil society advocacy? Because I think I keep hearing you mention advocacy. Are you into civil society? Is that what you identify as or with? That's my question. Then, because your major tool is enlightenment, you are trying to drive enlightenment amongst the citizenry. Do you think you are at a disadvantage or an advantage in that, when you empower people, what do you stand to gain? Do you get me? Because whether you like it or not, whatever anybody does, there should be a benefit somehow. But it seems that there's usually a strain on people who are in the advocacy area, or should I say civil society generally. It's usually challenging, especially first off, maybe they don't have a foot yet on the in the industry. Is usually their survival is usually challenging. So my question is, how do you manage all this? Yeah. Thank you.
3 questions. Thank you very much for them. I could merged it together and try to answer it as one. I hope I would succeed with that. And the other one I would say that stands alone is specific to how do we deal with, threats, and the risk involved in the work that we do. There are indeed risks. I mentioned earlier that in doing this unprecedented legislative accountability work that we do, have put us in collision course with certain forces. Politicians, can be powerful. We have had the opportunity to have had exposures rather that are not very, comforting, But I tell you what, it's a determination to do what is right. And one very important factor in that has kept us going, that has strengthened our confidence and said to us that, hey, look, you are doing the right thing, is that we use data, we process data and tell the story with data. So there is nothing that we do in all the appeals that we make that can be faulted. So in 4 years, we did performance appraisals for 469 individuals in the National Assembly. For year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, for 4 years, there was no single one of these 469 individuals who came back to say, hey, look, you got it wrong. This is wrong. And they were able to validly prove so. Of course, there were attempts. More than once, we saw attempts, even on social media, to try to discredit the work that we do. I've had to face certain meetings and individuals and try to explain. We look at the facts that we have. We brought out the facts that we have, and it's always so. The point is, our work has not been validly challenged. And so, because it speaks to data, and data is stubborn, data are very stubborn things. You can't, it is what it is. It is what it says. Data from the records of the National Assembly itself that we're able to have certain privileged access to, right? So that has been, for us, is saving grace, a confidence booster, and a layer of protection for us. Because if we're getting it right, and you're not able to fault it validly, then if you're coming at us, then it means that you are just coming at us just with your bile of animosity, because you're not doing well, you're not doing what you should do. We face that. And like I said, we keep going. I have had personal brushes with security agencies. My background is in journalism. That is where I started off. That is, my basic. So in advancing to this level of journalism, and this is where I'm trying to dovetail into your 2 sets of second questions. I have had brushes. I've had to be, persecuted. But because the work that we do is based on facts, and facts that cannot be faulted, we somehow get off the hook. And all of this is history, and they further strengthen you because you are doing the right thing. You are convinced that you are doing the right thing. The public that is watching is convinced that you're doing the right thing. And one other very important thing is that members of the National Assembly themselves, even though they try to want to be funny, they have no choice but to admit it. And we have the records, we have testimonials for them. From many of them who say to us that, hey, look, your facts are figures, they are on point, you are holding us to account, please keep it up. You are helping us to reform and redirect our energies to what our core responsibilities should be. We should be lawmaking, so please keep it up. We have all of these testimonials, on our website and in our different publications. So those also help to strengthen us to say, hey, look, this may be daunting, but we will not be daunted. We'll keep doing what we are doing. Right. So yes, whether OrderPaper is, a media, is a civil society. So we're a mix, right? OrderPaper started off as a media, right? Provided exclusive niche reporting, of the parliament. So we continue to do that. Over time, we also saw that there were opportunities to engage the policy process with respect to certain reforms, and when we're able to get support, maybe from development partners, we're able to embark on those reforms. So we, for instance, undertake reforms around public finance issue. We are very interested in the amendments, of the Fiscal Responsibility Amendment Acts, for instance. That is an advocacy that we have been chasing, and we continue to chase that. We're very involved in the enactment of the Petroleum Industry Act, especially with respect to the host community, provisions of the Act. We had several meetings. We even provided capacity building for legislators. I remember we had an activity in March 2021 to you, we had the entire South-South caucus of the House of Representatives discuss the host community provisions of the Petroleum Industry Bill as it then was. So all of these are a mix of what we do, and somehow they keep us going. It is not always easy. It is not always encouraging. But what do? We live in a space that is, as you already can see, is full of landmines and difficulties. So we keep doing what we are doing, both as a media, a media social enterprise, and a civil society organization that also has to undertake policy advocacy. So that is how we get by. For you, I encourage you, do not let your dreams, be lowered. Keep it going. It's maybe not be easy, and like I also said earlier, we are open to continue to provide support, receive support, provide open arms for collaboration, and give collaborations and partnerships. So where there is, that clarity of what we want to do, of our vision, of our dreams, we can always find, the right sets of hands to hold with, and we would always advance. I want to believe I've been able to address your questions, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Evan, are you satisfied?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I can't see any other hand. What's something else we'll do, just to take permission from Mr. Oke, is that we're going to share his LinkedIn profile, just so that you guys can also try to connect with him. We also believe that this is a networking opportunity. So, sir, if that is fine with you, we can share that. And if anyone has any questions subsequently in the future, they can also engage. And also to follow OrderPaper on social media as well, across the various platforms, because that's a good way to stay abreast with all of the conversations. I'm happy to hear that Olaide is part of the legacies, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to share links for others to also join, especially around the staff framework. And let's see how we can begin to hold elected representatives, especially from the 10th Assembly. It's very good to start early, right? So let's start early. This is early days. Let's be able to ensure that we, put in precedents and begin to engage very early to do the right thing. So thank you so much, sir, for the time. We know that you had to give us this 1 hour, and you've been able to, calmly explain all of the various angles to this topic. And I'm sure that the listeners have, found very practical steps that they can take to be able to engage, on their policy ideas that they're writing from the hackathon, and to be able to find the right people that they should be able to engage with those policy ideas. So thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm happy to have had this engagement, and please, anytime, feel free to share my profiles. And OrderPaper is also on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, at OrderPaper, on YouTube as well at OrderPaper. For Instagram, that's a space we're so struggling to get some greater visibility and expression of our work. It's at OrderPaper today. So one of the challenges I would also throw to you, Ebenezer, and the rest of the beautiful team, is to also see, please, we welcome ideas and collaborations. One of the greatest, challenges organizations face is talent acquisition and retention. That's one challenge. So yeah, please, we keep our arms open. Once again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much for extending your arms to us, and you can be sure that we definitely will come in close to that, hands-off partnership, and we'll definitely be in touch with you, even as we begin to engage the participants of the hackathon, as they begin to think of how they can advocate for the ideas and even, plug into the already existing projects by OrderPaper. Thank you. So, thanks everyone. This was a great session. Just as we said, this is a very practical session, and that's why we kept it this way, so that we can all listen and learn from practical experiences from the work that Mr. Oke has done along with his team at OrderPaper. For the next few hours, not a few, because this is till 2 p.m. You have between now and 2 p.m. tomorrow in the afternoon to be able to submit your policy brief. Our advice is that just, if you can shut down everything else and just use tonight till tomorrow to be able to just give in your best to finalizing your policy brief. That would be great. While you work on the brief, if someone on your team can be putting together a presentation as well, that would also be great, because just as we said earlier, we're going to give certificates are a way to like mementos, right? To show that you were part of something. We're going to give certifications to those whose teams are able to submit a policy memo. Doesn't matter how perfect the policy memo is, but just the fact that you're able to go through the process. We don't want to give certifications to just only the teams that applied, because we are aware that there are some teams that might have applied, but are not actively joining these sessions, are not actively writing a policy brief, and we don't just want to throw things to people. So we'll be giving that certification to those whose teams are able to finish their policy brief based on their track. Put in your best. All of the tips are there. All of the information you need is on Padlets, Policy Start Today classes, anything you need. Feel free to also ask us. All of the recordings from the afternoon's plenary and this plenary session would also be shared with us shortly. So we'll put that in the group and also send via email for your records. So are there any questions just before we close and I'll head back to our groups? There are no more sessions up until tomorrow. Tomorrow's session is at 5 p.m. That's going to be the final session. There's an optional session between 10 a.m. and 12 noon tomorrow, but it's optional. It's just in case you have any extra questions. Thanks to those who were able to join the mentorship session earlier. So you can also join tomorrow, just in case you missed it. Yeah. So do we have a question, Roland?
Hi,
Roland. Is this Roland or Ajibola speaking?
Yeah.
Roland, yeah. Okay, go on.
I think I've been having problem. I'm having problem joining the WhatsApp email. So I don't know if that has been corrected. So I've tried several times, but it keeps doing that. I don't get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll add you to the group, Roland. I'll add you to the group.
Thank you. And well done. And thank you to the speaker.
Thank you. Thanks. Ajibola, you have a question as well?
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for putting this policy hackathon. It's been lovely.